For more insight on what's happening inside Ukraine and the investigations into potential war crimes there, I'm joined now by Brian Castner. Brian is a senior crisis advisor for Amnesty International, specializing in weapons and military operations. He recently returned from Ukraine. Brian, thank you so much for talking with us. I understand your trip was before the siege on Kyiv that was lifted. That must have been very difficult. But which areas were you able to access, and what did you see there?
Thank you for having me. So we were based in Lviv, but we were able to travel outside of the city to some of the surrounding towns, either to visit strike locations and also to visit people where they had settled after fleeing in the east. Really, our investigations were focused on war crimes, on the siege tactics that are being used by the Russians in places like Mariupol and Kharkiv and these cities that we know so well now. And so we were interviewing people about what they had seen as they were eyewitnesses and the people that they had lost, and trying to build out the legal cases of these crimes.
And we've seen so many just horrific pictures coming out of Bucha. Was that an isolated event, or do you have indications that this kind of thing is much more rampant and happening elsewhere in Ukraine?
I think what we're going to discover as different Russian-occupied areas are relieved that there's different stories from different areas. Obviously, in Bucha and some of the surrounding suburbs, there have been just horrific crimes. It appears people that have been bound, people that have been shot. But in other parts of the country, say in Kherson in the south, people are trying to protest against the Russian occupation. And of course, I think we have only a tiny sliver of perspective of what is happening in Mariupol and Berdyansk and some of the other areas. So unfortunately, I think there's much more to come. But we also are only going to know kind of city by city and Russian unit by Russian unit. And that's what's really important here, is which Russian units and which Russian commanders are responsible for each of these crimes.
And all indications are that the Russian military is now preparing for a fresh offensive in eastern Ukraine. What lies ahead, do you believe, for the citizens who have not yet evacuated?
Unfortunately, what we've seen from other locations like Sumy or Kharkiv or Mariupol is you just have these crushing siege tactics. And here's what I want to stress. These siege tactics that the Russians use, and hopefully will not, but appear, destined to be using in some other cities in eastern Ukraine, this is just one indiscriminate attack upon another. Any one of these attacks that we investigated, Amnesty, isolated on its own, would be its own war crime worthy of investigation and documentation and perhaps prosecution. But you just have these indiscriminate attacks day upon day, hour by hour, minute by minute in some locations. And so it's just a mountain of crimes. It's a mountain of evidence for us to parse through. And for the people living through it, they're just, stuck in basements and bomb shelters. The only times they come outside are for food or water. And this is unfortunately when civilians die. The very few times they're outside, they're being hit by these indiscriminate attacks.
And there's still many questions about Friday's missile strike at the train station there in eastern Ukraine. From the information that you've been able to gather, though, was this just another Russian attack on civilians or something else?
Well, unfortunately, we're not able to conclusively prove it one way or another yet. Both Ukraine and Russia both use the missile that was used in this particular attack. And so we're continuing our investigation. I would just say, unfortunately, if it does eventually prove to be a Russian attack, it's not isolated. We have seen Russian attacks on civilian infrastructure before, and so it would just be part of a pattern.
And the path to possible war crime charges is certainly a long one. What are the important steps for the international community to take now in order to ensure that justice will eventually be brought to those responsible?
I think really the most important thing is preservation of evidence. And we've seen as these areas open, Bucha or others, obviously there's great interest in both from journalists and investigators to find out what happened, but also for civilians to return to their homes and see what's left of them, what's left of their, if their family members are still there when they've been cut communication. Obviously, there's an understandable rush, but as much as possible to be able to preserve the evidence, the physical evidence, but also being able to contact people about what happened. That's my concern, is that when the trials come, and they will come, we want to make sure that there's the evidence available for them to be fair and complete.
Brian Castner, we thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.